beautiful. Gitanjali Hemp. How are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
In this moment, I'm feeling good, which I'm thankful for. Because, last few days, not as much. So, right here, right now, I'm feeling good. I'm glad you're feeling good too. That's nice. Yeah.
I start getting curious. What changed for you?
Between right now and the last few days, my body went through a cleansing. I'm actually still in cleanse right now. I, for whatever bizarre, miraculous reason, decided to do a watermelon cleanse. So my body, like, right before I started that, was like, hey, by the way, we're gonna do an extra cleanse too. So I got lots of symptoms that were helping me move stuff. And so physically, it was a really crunchy Monday, Tuesday, where I was like doing a lot of processing, a lot of physical processing. And I've just learned, like, just surrender, be graceful, drink lots of water, like, get rest whenever I can. So I actually utilized the time to do a lot of sweet bonding time with my daughter. And so it felt deeply restorative and connective, and also my body. I feel like already today I'm like on this
other side.
where you start to like feel the benefit of all that cleansing, releasing, and so that's where I'm at today. And today and tonight too, I think also just being here with you, and yet it's that like like life coming in. Yeah, and I'm curious because you're feeling really well, and right before I got here tonight, I saw on Facebook that you wrote something, you wished that there was a heartbreak emoticon or emoji on Facebook. And so I was like, heartbreak? And you said there are so many things you wish that there was like a heartbreak emoji for.
Yeah, so I posted that today, and it was interesting to see people's responses too. The reason that I posted that was mostly because, seeing different things going on in the world, and I've actually been away from Facebook and social media most of the summer. I've come in between things, but I've been, out in Yosemite and in Tuolumne Meadows, and we were in Maui and out in a lot of places, and up in Tahoe. And when I come back and I see what's going on, I am having a really hard time seeing how much divisiveness there is in the world. And so that breaks my heart. And then I'm seeing things with the drought and seeing waterways that are completely empty, and all the salmon dying, and all these things happening with different things with climate change. And it breaks my heart. And what I was saying was that there's this sad face emoji, and that it's a really somatic experience for me when I see something like that. My experience is a felt sense that's deep in my body. And it's not like I'm heartbroken and I'm destroyed. It's like I feel a brokenheartedness. And when I feel that deep somatically in my body and empathically, there's this way that it inspires me to do something different. And when I feel the sad face emoji, it doesn't. It's just kind of like, oh, sad face. Can keep going. And it just feels like it drops in deeper in my system and in my body when I feel and hear things like that. And I wish there was a way to share that. It was just kind of a flippant thing I said. But it was interesting to see people's responses, and how for some people, hearing of a broken heart feels like it's the end of the world. And for me, I feel like I live my life and my heart's broken 50,000 times a day. And that makes me feel alive, and it makes me feel like I'm engaged, and I'm really present in some way with what's actually happening here. And it doesn't take me off my center. So it was interesting to see the responses, but that was where that came from.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So the interesting to see the responses. It sounds like maybe some of that was like, oh, your heart is breaking. Was that part of it?
A very little bit of it. Actually, a lot of people responded really, really like they understood where I was coming from. And then there was a few people who had a little bit of like, oh, poor you. And I was kind of like, yeah, no.
Okay, got it. You're like, actually, didn't feel it that way.
I didn't feel it that way. But yeah, that was where it came from. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're living in a really heartbreaking time. I do. And I think that's, okay.
I love how you named that. It's heartbreaking. Like I just feel so much like peace and like comfortability with you when you're naming that. That even inspires me to get even more comfortable with my own breaking heart, because I feel like that has been such a theme is the heartbreaking. And then one thing I wrote on my Facebook page, I think it was like a year or so ago, but it was like break, what was it? Break down, break open, break through. But it was the sensation I was having of allowing it to be that process of like, instead of stopping in the breaking and then like naming it as like a thing, like, oh my, it's broken, I'm broke, like allowing it to be that transformative process that it like deepened, and then there's an opening, and then there's this like thing that like gushes through. At least that was has been my sensation of it. And I feel like when you name that, it gives me even more sense. I love, you said, what was it? Like my heart breaks, but I don't lose my center. Something like that. Can you describe that a little bit more, what that means for you?
Yeah, there's definitely a quality where, I mean, it's exactly what you're naming too. It's like when something goes unnamed in a space or something goes unnamed in a process within me, I think that's when we get thrown off center. That's when I get thrown off center, right? Like, so if there's a quality of something that I'm not willing to turn towards or look at or embrace that's actually occurring and happening, if it's not named or spoken to, then my system starts to kind of, try to account for that or try to avoid that. And it's not going to sit in its center and flow in a full way. But if I stay with the truth of who I am and centered in that place, there's this way that I can turn towards anything that's occurring and embrace it and bring it into the greater flow of my being. And so if there's something that is hard for me or painful, in myself or in the world or my experience of it, if I can turn towards it and name it and own it and allow it to impact me, I can trust that my system can also integrate it and digest it. And so it actually brings me closer to center. And I think that's so crucial for me in my own process and practice right now. And there's so much going on in the world. So there's a lot that we're being asked to face and to integrate. And the paradox of it is the more I do that, the stronger I become. And I think the question or the doubt is like, is this going to break me? Is this going to weaken me in some way? But I think the opposite's actually true. And so that's what it feels like to me. The brokenheartedness actually makes me more of who I am and makes me more stable in all ways. So, yeah. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's small things and it's easy, and sometimes it's really big things that take me to the edge of my capacity. But
totally.
Yeah.
Has there been anything recently that you could speak to that took you to the edge of your capacity?
I would say not in the recent past, but definitely, a year ago or so. There was that for sure. I had talked to you a little bit earlier, but there was a big shift and transition in my relationship with my husband, and that was a really challenging time and a really challenging thing. It definitely took me to the edge of my capacity, and I feel like I was really, in some psychology models, they'll call it like your core repeating pattern, like the foundational, like blip. That everything else is built on top of, and I feel like I really sat with that this last year, and as the whole world kind of disintegrated through COVID and through everything, I got to do that personally.
So you found your core repeating pattern?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's like the one thing but yeah, I think I really got to the core of some pretty foundational attachment issues and places in my own psyche that needed to be looked at and addressed.
Yeah. Could you name like where you felt like your capacity was stretched through that, like a specific theme or two, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way I could just kind of speak to it and through it a little bit. There was like trying to track it in a way and speak to it in a way that is like, translatable in a good way. There was this place, so my husband and I, we've been together for 19 years. I've been married for 17 years. And we had a really bumpy time in the last couple years. And so it got to the point where last winter, before COVID, we have a big property, and he decided, and he moved out into the studio on the property, and we were kind of slowly starting this process of separation. And in the spring, we really hit the place of separation. Like, we were like, okay, we think we're done. And when we got married, we had a big 3-day wedding ceremony on the cliffs over Big Sur, and we had all these people, and it was beautiful and amazing. And we created our own ceremony. And the ceremony, I made these clay vessels, and we got fresh water from these streams and ocean water, and we mixed them with our families there. And the intention around the ceremony was a little bit the healing and clearing of the karma, the ancestral karma around marriage and family and relationship. Like, you know, I was young and like big dreams, and our love was strong enough. It was a heavy intention. So we did this thing, and so last spring on our anniversary in May, we went to the ocean and we took those vessels and we unbound everything in the energies. You know, I do a lot of energy work and ceremonial work. So we really did it ceremonially, and we unbound our connection, our relationship in that way. And as soon as we did it, the experience I had was like a veil got lifted, and I turned and I looked at him, and I felt like I could see him again for the first time in 5 years, 10 years. And I'd been the one pushing for kind of like wanting the break, and in a lot of ways we both felt that way, but I've been more advocating for it. And I think so after we did that, and then I was kind of left in this spaciousness in myself, I started recognizing and noticing the things that I was responsible for in the connection, and the ways that that energetic binding and those old kind of contracts and cords and karmas had kept us in a fixed state, and that we definitely outgrown that state, and that wasn't true and right. But then I started seeing in a different way the ways that I behaved in relationship and dynamic that were not in integrity with who I actually am. Like, I wouldn't be that way in any other context in my world and life. I could see how they were outdated. And as that was happening and I was feeling the separation from him, there was this tremendous amount of nameless, faceless pain. And it was like more extreme than I could possibly even begin to put words to or understand. And it was more than just about him. And so as I sat with that, I started realizing how much I did in my life to not have to feel that level of pain, and because it felt intolerable. And so I was kind of sitting with, and the ways I tried to control and manage things to never have to feel that. Like, that was the feeling. And so the radical responsibility to allow myself to feel through that fully and completely. And really starting to realize and get, because I can do a lot somatically tracking and in timelines and different things, I could really feel how much it was connected to just after birth. And so it was really pre-verbal. And it was really this place that was nameless and faceless and had this sensation of absolute annihilation for me. And so really being able to feel my way through that, and to not resist it, to not fight it, to not run from it, to not place the responsibility for it on anyone outside of myself, started to completely reconfigure and rewire me at such a core level. And I've done a lot of work for decades in all different types of ways. And sometimes one of the things I'll say to students and clients is that, you know, when there's enough resource and resiliency in the system, that's when we can finally deal with the thing at the core. But until that's built, our system won't let us. Like, there's a safety mechanism that makes sense. And I feel like I'd established a certain level of stability, and then had the willingness, and then life kind of gave me the circumstances to actually feel to the core of this place. And in doing that, I think a real foundational shift happened for me. And so it definitely took me to the edge of my capacity. It took like every skill that I had to feel that to that level and degree. Yeah.
Were there any core skills that you feel like are your go-tos that you leaned on at that time in general?
I mean, I think there's so many really, like, you know, that have become second nature to me. But, you know, one of them is definitely always remembering my belonging. And what that means to me is kind of, as I center in myself, even if I forget who I am, to know that there's other thing and people and places that always remember, and to be able to connect to that. And so the stars know me, and they've always known me, and they never forget who I really am. And the Pacific Ocean and the Sierras and Haleakala, and, you know, like I can name all these places, and if I can find myself woven into the fabric of creation in that way, then I can't get lost. I can't lose myself. And I feel like that that's something I lean into, that's a resource and connection. And that includes humans that are closer in. But I mean, I think for me, sometimes when the emotions are huge, that vastness is really supportive. So remembering my place in all that is.
Yeah. Any physical tools? Like for your physical body or?
Yeah, I mean, always being in nature and exercising in that way, and long prayer walks I do very, very regularly, and breath work and meditation is like a huge part of my existence in life. So I mean, part of it is like I don't even think about those things anymore. It's just like that's...
So when you were going through your really deep process, were you doing those things regularly?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
maybe extra even, or like just like definitely keeping a rhythm.
Definitely keeping a rhythm, and definitely I think there were so many things reconfiguring, right? Like I mean, also it was in the context of a pandemic year, right? And so like last spring we were really locked down in different ways, so we were on the property together. So it wasn't like I could go out into community and go have these other relationships, you know, and go out with friends and do whatever. It's a different context in a lot of ways, and even going to work wasn't happening. I was working from home, so it changed a lot of things. So it's hard to say what created the shift, but I made sure, you know, at that time the beaches were closed except during the middle of the day, but I took my kids and we went to the ocean every morning and every evening, and you know, in the water and long walks and, you know, all those things. So in that way it was like I was doubling up on my nature time and on my practices in those ways, but I think there was a lot of factors as to why that was happening.
Yeah. So with all of that reconfiguration, it sounds like can you name how it or how it felt for you to come back into relationship with your husband?
Oh yeah. That was a fun process. So we were done.
Were you serious or facetious?
Both.
Okay. Both. Like, okay.
Totally both.
Okay.
Yeah, so that happened, and then like a couple days passed, and we have 2 kids, and so we were still kind of, you know, connecting in terms of like having meals together and spending time together in those ways. And something just started happening, and I just requested of him, you know, that we would take a breath, like we would take a moment, because something was happening for me and it was really big. And I apologized to him. I was kind of like, I feel like I'm a good tender. I tend to the people around me. I tend to my life, like kind of like artistically, creatively, like the community of my work, like all these different ways I tend to people. And I didn't tend to him. I didn't tend to our relationship for a long time. And I was like, it's kind of like, you know, in a garden, and there was this potted plant, and it was our marriage. And I kind of like look at it and be like, ugh, it doesn't look so good. Like, oh, I'm not going to water it. Like, I'm not giving it any more time. And I even maybe sometimes kick it as I walk past. Like, I just felt like I was really, you know, and I was like, I just wonder, I don't know that we fit together. I don't know that any of these things, you know, I don't know what it's going to lead to. But, I feel like it would be a real disservice to not see what would happen if we like put it in a better container and like gave it some light and poured some water on it just a little bit and like see what happens. Like, and he was kind of like, you're crazy. Like, it's taken like 2 years to get to the point that I can even think about letting this go. Like, you know, he's like, you know, you're really like being mercurial, like this back and forth is making me crazy. Like, I don't know. So anyway, we kind of put things on pause, and then we just had a friendship and connection. But that night, we ended up texting back and forth all night. And I think it was the most honest conversation we'd had in 15 years. And everything came out, like everything. Like, this is actually how I feel about this. This is what this feels like in my experience. And these are things that just are non-negotiable and don't feel comfortable for me anymore. Like, both of us, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then we had to go through working through 20 years of ruts in our dynamic, really. And that wasn't easy. And so we slowly rebuilt and had a lot of spaciousness and a lot of honesty and a lot of boundaries. And during the summer, it kind of looked like once a week we would hit these really difficult places, and then, not be sure how to not lift the gate. Like, how do we, what do we do here? Maybe we just let it go. Wait, what's happening? And then we'd find these pathways. And there was a lot of new practices and skills that I found for myself in finding ways to repattern and navigate and have new ways of connecting. And we really rebuilt our relationship from the ground up. And as the weeks went on, that would happen every 2 weeks and then once a month, and it got further and further apart, and would have more and more time of good connection, and have new ways of relating. And he's still living in the studio, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, and it's really, really great to have that type of space. And with the type of work that I do and just who he is as a person, I think it's really important for us to have that kind of space. Like, I think it's healthy and makes sense and is good. And I don't think that necessarily it's right for us to be together all the time and in the same room all the time and in the same, everything. And having a quality and a level of spaciousness, there's so much more perspective and so much more allowance and so much more connection for the sovereignty and fullness of who each of us are, and how and where we connect and where we don't. And I think we're both changing and growing in a way that we hadn't been for a long time. And it feels really good. And I felt proud of me and of us. I don't think that whatever happens moving forward in the future, whatever we just did, I would have had to do no matter what. I know that. That was all work that I would have to do, whether I stayed in a relationship with him or found another relationship or was by myself for the rest of my life. And I felt proud because I feel like I worked through a big chunk of karma. Yeah. And I get to enjoy the benefits of it too. We're having a lot of fun. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good work, sister.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that feeling in me too of just having, going through a lot, and you get to space, you're like, wow, there's maybe more space or breath and more functionality and things are smoother, whatever, all the things. And you're like, oh, we just did that. I just did that, right? And there's such a, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I'm not sure if you'll be able to pull back to this, but I did get curious when you said that you had to maybe learn new. Okay, you got it. What? Tell me.
Yeah. So there were so many pieces. There's so many pieces. Oh my gosh. But one of them was that radical sovereignty for my own emotional experience, radical responsibility for my own emotional experience, and that led to sovereignty, right? So if I was having an experience or a feeling based on something that he did or said, could I feel to the depth of that feeling? And then because what I would do instead is I would try to control the situation in some way. And I think there's even I think even nonviolent communication does this. I feel like this. When you do this, I feel this. And I would go through, but that was still putting the blame on him or the responsibility on him to change or shift. And so the difference was, if I said, I'm having this feeling and I hate this feeling, I do not want to feel this way, but I'm going to feel it anyway. And so whatever he did or didn't do, I'm just going to feel this all the way. And so two things. One of them is then that allowed me to get curious, what's actually happening over there. And as soon as I did, a lot of the time I would figure out or find out that the story I was telling myself about what was happening wasn't actually what was happening. First of all. Secondly, if it was what was actually happening, if I was genuinely curious. So there's a big energetic difference. I couldn't act like I was curious, but still be angry. I had to actually be curious. And if I and that's so vulnerable, so innocent and vulnerable. So the core of my little girl, infant child needed to come forth and be like, what's happening? What's actually happening? Then oftentimes he would shift spontaneously.
If you could get to that place of vulnerable, honest curiosity.
Yeah. Okay. And so sometimes there'd be a frustration, do I have to go there all the time in order for you? And then having to let that story go, it doesn't matter. I have to go there because I have to go there. And whatever you do or don't do with it doesn't matter anymore. And realizing that my vulnerable, innocent child isn't actually that vulnerable and innocent, because I actually have a wise elder and grown person in me that's also holding space and knows good boundaries. So it wasn't like I was still being sovereign. I still wasn't asking him to then take care of my infant. I was taking care of my infant, but I was letting him see my infant. But if he was unsafe at any time, then I could take care of myself. But he wasn't unsafe. So that's why it worked. And not only that, the other piece was that I work with different forms of like working with consciousness states work. And so the other piece of that is I would hit places of not knowing and really learning how to surrender to that not knowing. And what that looked like for me was, as soon as I hit a place of not knowing, getting excited and saying, I don't know, whatever. I don't know how to feel safe in this. I don't know how to be in relationship. I don't know, like really being humble. Like, I don't know these things. If I did, my experience would be different. And I think there's a way that, anyway, I'm not going to talk about other things or models or whatever. But anyway, what I realized for myself is if I could get to the place of saying, I don't know how to be in a relationship in this way. I don't know how to receive love in this place. I don't know how to feel safe in this place. If I could say that to myself first and then follow that up with, but I know something deep within me and something greater than me that also exists deep within me does. There is something that does know how to receive love, how to be healthy in relationship, and I can, in this moment right now, open to that knowing. I can become that. And if I sat with that, my system will start to reconfigure. And there was also a knowing of like, I know what I want and what I deserve. And I'll sit in that too. And I would just let everything reconfigure in that. And it was so hard because I had to feel my way all the way into that place. But if I got to that place and did that, what happened 99.9% of the time was then he would turn up. And so it was kind of like this process of, I kept going historically in the relationship and being like, you need to be this in some way. And he would be like, it wouldn't work and it wouldn't function. And as soon as I settled back into myself and reorganized in this way, he would be sitting there being that. And so, I mean, I just think, I don't think that was necessarily always the case, but for me, there was definitely a clarity of like, oh, I am creating this reality in all of these contexts and circumstances. And so this doesn't just apply to a relationship. I think this translates to all sorts of things. And I think there's a lot of feeling all the way through things to birth ourselves through that process, to birth myself through that process. So I learned a lot this last year.
You did.
I really did. And I applied a lot and I felt a lot.
Yeah. The instrument gets really vibrational, doesn't it? Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing all of that. Really, really beautiful. It reminds me of when talking about another Facebook post. Sadly, I feel like that's one of the main ways. Like, we're so busy, both of us, that like we stay in touch. I'm like, there she is. I mean, at least I get that. There was a Facebook post. I'm not exactly sure how long, maybe a year or two ago. It was so fascinating for me. I read the whole thing. I think I might have even shared it, but I think it was around the dental surgery.
Oh, not dental surgery. Yeah, my throat surgery.
Throat surgery. Okay, there was a surgery, and I'd love if it feels alive. If it doesn't, no worries. But if it does feel at all alive, for you to speak to, because I appreciated so much of what was communicated in that. For me, the pieces, I'll just take a moment to reflect that I really valued. I mean, I valued the whole communication and your willingness to share all of that. And I also deeply valued how it was like my takeaway was like, even though you were anesthetized or you were out, your body went through something. And it wasn't until like a day or like something that you realized, but then you let your body actually process, like actually release, go through the process of like processing and then maybe releasing, and how necessary that was for your healing process and just for your actual maybe integration of the experience in a way that would truly benefit you. That's my takeaway. But if you have anything to say about that, I just thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the crux of it. I had that surgery. I was under for a lot longer than I thought I would be, and I had, and they'd sent me home with pain medication and whatever. And I don't really do anything. I don't respond well to things like that. So I came home and I hadn't taken anything, and I felt really strong and good actually. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and I could see like on my face and my tissues and my eyes, I was like, oh my God, you're not okay. Like, you're really not okay. And so I took myself to bed and I was laying there and I just kind of started breathing and feeling my body. And my legs started like moving, and I've done a lot of somatic work, so I can let my body do what it wants to. And my legs started really moving, and I was like, started realizing like, oh my God, they're running. And I started really getting like, oh, my body just spent like hours like being immobilized, like screaming, wanting to run and get away from being cut open, and didn't get the chance to. And so I let my legs move, I let my body move, and I let these like screams and terror kind of move through my facial muscles and through this whole area. And letting myself do that, I never had to take any type of pain medicine. Like I didn't take anything. I feel like my body got to move and express and make its way through what it needed to. And so there was no swelling, there was no anything. I took high potency arnica twice. That's it.
Wow.
And homeopathic phosphorus for the sedation, but that's all I took, and I didn't need anything. And so yeah.
It reminds me of something I feel like I heard years and years ago. That was, at first it was foreign because sadly, I think it's sad that in our culture, our bodies and our somatic expression, like the way our bodies, it seems to me naturally know how to process, and also release, right? So the shaking thing, like I learned that shaking is actually a natural way that our bodies release fear or trauma or any of that if we don't allow that to happen, it stays stuck in our tissues, right? Yeah. So it reminds me of that. Do you think that it's probably similar?
I think exactly that. Yeah.
The body knows how to release.
Yeah.
It knows how to let go of something that might, if we don't let it, stay stored in our tissues as trauma.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd want to add to that? Because I know you do so much work in that realm.
I just think our bodies are so incredibly intelligent. I just, there's a lot of spiritual things that talk about this, but that the body and and our spirit and our kind of personality are different things. Essentially, they're not exactly the same thing, right? And so there's a way that we want to bridge, to weave, to build harmony amongst them. That we have our physical vehicle and our personality vehicle and our spiritual, our soul, and then we also have an essence nature that I think ideally they all orient towards. Like if the essence can kind of underlie and help have a rhythm and harmony with all the other parts. And I do think culturally we value some of those parts over others. And when we do that, I think it gets us gummed up in different ways. And so a lot of, I think the work of life for me is finding greater harmony and coherence amongst all these aspects of being, and that they kind of function well and harmoniously together, and that they all hold their own wisdom, and that they can overlay each other in really beautiful ways. And so often we kind of are compartmentalized and we're kind of suppressing this part or stuffing that one. And
Essence and soul. What is to you the
distinction? Yeah. So for me, soul, so we have ancestral lineage. And so that's like our parents and our generations back, right? And that is our DNA and our form. And then soul is kind of like the lineage of lifetimes. And so for me, it's kind of a fulcrum point of like beyond just this lifetime. So it's kind of like humanoid, but not necessarily male or female or anything else. And I'll have an archetypal energy or flavor to it based on the karmic kind of patterns we're working out in multiple different lifetimes or timelines, how they're overlapped and overlay. And it kind of holds that intelligence and information through all timelines. And then essence is like the first individuation or iteration from that which created us. Out of the emptiness radiates a light that's specific to us, and that's essence. It's just pure and undefined. And there's a big distance between essence to soul that has a lot more information. And then even more as it comes into personality and into body. That's the way I frame it.
Nice. You just named it kind of like, from here to here. I wonder too, though, because one of the findings that I've been finding, because you said it earlier on too, is like, it was something about the most expansive or the most, but then also the deepest. And I feel it that way all the time too, which is like, it's that both and of it's like the most here, but it's the most here.
Absolutely.
And so would you also name that maybe that it could go that way too?
It
from
does
like
go
essence
that way too.
to soul
Absolutely.
to personality to body, something like that?
Okay. It goes in both directions simultaneously. Totally. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That makes sense. I feel like, so much of the felt sensation experience of my own working through all the layers is like more and more just taking off all the layers of the stuff, right? Just taking it all off, like loving it and allowing it to inform more and more of how I show up. And yet, though, more and more just like all that's left is just the light. It's just the beaming essence, maybe, right? Because maybe even the soul, how you're naming it, still contains some of the story.
It does.
Some of the fabric of like who we've been or who we thought that we are.
It's conditioned. Yeah.
Right. And maybe just we are just coming back into the truest, most like kind of simple and yet very precise space of self.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing for me with that is like coming into that core essence place, but still needing or wanting, I think, for me, the personality vehicle, because that's how I relate and function in the world, and the physical vehicle, because that's how I get to experience life in a body. But if it comes to essence alignment, I always think of this Mary Oliver poem, and she talks about the mama sea turtles, and they have a wish beyond a wish, like a dream beyond a dream. They don't know why they do it, but they return to the same beach every year and dig a hole and lay their eggs. And it's like this quality of like, if I could tap into my essence to that degree, and if like my form could tap into its flow to that degree and that level, it's like living so much as self that it's like one thing just leads to another. We don't even know why we do what we do. And yet it's not being unconscious. It's being so supremely aware and conscious, right? It's like that paradox, without all the things that get us in the way, all the conditions that take us away from who we really are and what we actually want. I think there's so much conditioned what we think we should need or what we think we should want, but really coming into just our pure aligned desire and moving with that in life. Yeah.
Pure aligned desire. I like the naming of that. Yeah. I love it's, it is kind of a novel. Maybe novel is not quite the right word, but it's kind of fun, right? Putting all of that into these word package things.
Totally.
It's like, how do I don't know. Yeah.
And then it just comes close. That's like exactly hit it.
Totally. Yeah. It's like in that direction somewhere. Right? Totally.
Yeah.
Well, being such a teacher as you are, I'm imagining that you're still doing all your courses and doing all the things that you do, which are so beautiful. I know so many people in our community that you've touched through the work that you offer. Even, it's funny because I actually put it together that my first friend that I made when I came to Santa Cruz, like 8 years ago or something, at the time, I think it was even, like almost then, I remember her saying, I'm in this program and I'm working with this person and da-da-da. It wasn't until like years later that I put together that was your program. So I'm like, okay, you've been like touching my life somehow for this whole time, right? I'm curious with the world, the way that it is right now and with what's going on, if there's anything that you might want to speak to in terms of just like themes or that you feel are especially important, like what we as humans are working on and through right now, like what maybe you're finding in your toolbox, in your kit that you work with and teach that are just especially helpful with what people are going through right now. Curious if you have any of that.
I think it's really all of what we've been talking about tonight, and I think, I think we're in a state of such breakdown, really, and I think we're going to continue to be for a long time. I'd say we have a good another decade before we turn around and realize we're in some new place. And I think within that, right now, what I would say is that it's really important for us to know how we navigate for each one of us, to be able to follow our own knowing, our own intuition, to be able to acknowledge the places where we don't know, to be open to seeing things in new and different ways, to continuously get current with what's actually real for us, because that's changing. And I think sometimes we think we're a certain person or a certain way and we atrophy, and I don't think we have room to do that right now. I think it's really important to almost every day be like, what's being called of me right now? Like, who am I? How do I show up? What are the core values that are here that I am aligning with? You know, what is my intention in life? Because I think that's really, really important. It's kind of like the ground is moving underneath us, and it's important to orient to our own center. I think essence is what grounds us. And I think historically there'd be other things that were pretty stable, and we could like reach out for those to ground us, and they're all moving. Everything's moving. And so I think one of the things I've been, working with and talking to a lot of different clients in different ways about is that the old ways aren't going to work anymore. And so the places where we think like, I should do this because this is what keeps me safe, or this is how this functions or works, and we try to do things from a mental place of what we should do, I think are not going to give us good results. And I think can lead to some uncomfortable situations as things continue to shift and change. And I think the more we tune into our essence and what we're called to do in each moment, even if it seems crazy or seems like it doesn't make sense in the way the world looks. We don't know what the world's going to look like a week from now, much less 2 months from now, much less 2 years from now. So if we can listen to what we're orienting to and what we're called to and really trust that, we have to trust that we'll be positioned in the right way when we get there. Like everything's moving at once. So it's a different type of orientation, I think. So I think that's,
that makes sense. It's beautiful. Orienting to center, to essence, allowing that to be the consistent, steady thing. Allowing way more also, I feel like I'm just also making sure I feel like I heard, because I feel like I heard it, and yet I just wanted to also allowing the ideas and all the thoughts that we've constructed, because everything else is changing too, allowing all those to also just kind of even more now get softer and softer. Just move away, and in that core essence space, or that deep internal place of like self and like that. And I love what you said too earlier about how you navigated at times when you weren't even clear about who you exactly were, but you could maybe like geo-navigate with all these places that like hold a certain space for you that maybe reflect you back to you in a certain way, that you like navigate with those pieces, and like you're like, there I am. That feels so powerful to be like, oh, there I am, and then allow whatever arises from that space of like our deepest internal connectivity to be the thing that informs, and from moment to moment, which is what this time is asking for, because there is so much change that we can't have these preconceived ideas really much anymore. Does that feel like a pretty good
great.
Nice. Anything else in the work that you're doing these days that feels maybe helpful or important to name? She laughs. No?
There's so many pieces that I think that sometimes there's so many things I could pick from to share, and then I kind of wonder how much backstory would need to be there, like how much back teaching would need to be there to lay it out. But I really think that's the bulk of it. To stay in integrity with the truth of who we are. And to first learn how to get in touch with the truth of who we are. And then to move from that place.
Is there a certain way that you teach that, or that you would want to just, that you could name that?
I think there's a couple of things that I would say. One of them is that it's what we had started talking about in the very beginning, which is this place where we as humans, we avoid, we do. And we do that because it's a great coping mechanism. And I am all for coping mechanisms. You know, if your house is about to burn down or, you know, something scary is happening, you don't want to be processing all the feelings at all. It's not appropriate, you know, like you compartmentalize. It's this beautiful skill we have and we get things done. And that's really important. And I think that we live in that space a lot. You know, we tend to all shallow breathe, like prey animals, like we're being hunted. We tend to always be in a state of coping. And that's not healthy on any level. It's definitely not healthy in what we create. We recreate the same old pattern and paradigm and story when we're functioning from that place. There's no creativity or creation when we're living in that place of flight and threat. So to reorient that, it's all the wonderful things that you do, that we do, you know, breath work, meditation, yoga, being able to drop deeper into self. And that's foundational. And then the second piece of that is when you've anchored that in yourself, I think there can be a tendency to be like, I feel so good. So bad thoughts come. I don't want to think about them. I'm not going to listen to you. Uncomfortable things are happening in the world. I'm not going to look at that either, you know, and because you want to maintain this feeling that you've generated, that you've worked really hard breathing and meditating and doing whatever else you're doing. But it's not sustainable. And so I think like if there was something that I think is a really key thing to stability in the context of accelerated change that we're all going through is continuing to cultivate with those practices. But once we've found that depth in that place and that spaciousness, from that centered place to turn towards whatever's showing up, to make that part of the practice. Every time you sit, turn towards what's uncomfortable. Turn towards the discomfort in your body. Turn towards the voice that's screaming. Turn towards the internalized voice that's telling you whatever, you're bad, you're wrong, it's going to fail, everything's going to whatever, people are crazy, like whatever the voice is. Turn towards it and trust that if you've anchored a quality of stability, when you turn towards it and you listen to it, it's not going to pull you off. It will settle in your presence. And so bringing that presence to all of these other spaces helps to integrate and settle them. And that makes us more stable. And so I think that is how we get to know ourselves too. Because all of these other voices are also part of ourself. And if we can turn towards them and we get to know them, those voices actually begin to transform. They won't stay in that state. If you listen to what the fear is, what the voice is saying, it will start to settle, and you can ask it secondarily, not just what are you saying, but what do you need? And when you find out what it needs, then that's self-care. It's not going and taking a bath when the voice is telling you like, I actually need you to have better boundaries with this person. And then you're like, oh, that's the path to stability. So these voices that are inside of us all the time, in all of us, when we listen to them, they're actually the pathway to everything that we most want, to whatever stability and coherence that we need, and to the direction to what we need to do to make it as this world is changing. They have the answers. Not directly, not like I'm going to do whatever they tell me, but more like if I listen to them and tend to them and find out what I need to do to help them feel safe, that leads me to what is the next right action. So it's kind of abstract and a lot, but that's, beautiful. I think, the practice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It makes perfect sense. And I love how you named right there that like self-care can take on so many forms. I love how you just named that, right? Where it's like the voice is like, I'm afraid or I need something. And you're like, I'll go take a bath. I mean, I love that you named that, because sometimes it is like, I'll just go do the thing that I know that helps me. And then wait, it's not helping me. Why is it not helping me? And yet if we lean into the discomfort, if we really listen, if we really feel in and then allow it to inform, to learn. And I love also how you named like maintaining the center. For me, it's the felt sensation of depth and presence and connectivity, and like I'm in the space of that presence and I'm maintaining that, and then shining that light or bringing that breath to this thing that has showed up, has arrived, and then start to really listen. That I love how you named it. It's like if I really listen to this thing and just work with it and let it settle, maybe it is like, something else entirely that I wouldn't have even thought through. Like, oh, I need to end that thing, or oh, like that needs to shift, and oh, I need to speak up for myself here, or whatever it is. But it's like I would never have gotten that peace, or I would have taken so much longer if I would have just resisted it somehow, or tried to take a bath 5 times or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking right now, I'm like, oh, I actually have an example like that, you know. So, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier too. So, I was telling you, you know, I have a 14, almost 15-year-old son, and this last year in COVID and things were really, he had a hard time, and he went into this kind of bumpy. He was getting up to some funky stuff, and I was hitting points where I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, and in the context of other times, I think we have our life set up in a way that we would know what to do. But with COVID, there was so much limitation in different ways, socially and with different things going on. And we've been doing really, really well. But he's just so brilliant and amazing and intense. And I was hitting this place of like, I don't know what to do as a mom. And I think as a mom, I think we hit that sometimes, right? Oh, yeah. Like developmental stages and like, how do I do this well? So I was hitting this point of being like, I don't know what to do with him or for him exactly. And so I could feel this tension that would come up in my system when I would hit this place. And I could feel how I'd be like, I know what to do, and we're going to do this, and he's going to do that, and, you know, we're going to take him, and I'm going to get him to do some, like, I don't know, some kind of ceremonial thing, and some bands work, and I'm going to get him to a therapist, and I'm going to, you know, I could feel this, like, tension, and I could recognize the tension in my system. That's what I got really good at. Like, I know when I'm, like, starting to get crazy, and I was like, yeah, this is not a good place to make decisions from. Those are all really good ideas, Gitanjali, but, like, I don't think they're going to get you the results that you want. And so I kind of settled and was like, okay, let me just get with how afraid I am. And so that was the tending I needed to do. Like, I am terrified. What am I afraid of? You know, mom fear. Like, I'm going to ruin this person. He's going to die. He's going to ruin his life. He's going to, like, you know, whatever the stories go that could get really, really big, and feeling responsible and feeling guilty and feeling like whatever. And I felt my way through all of those things and was like, okay, so you feel that way. What do you need? And then it was kind of like, oh, I didn't even think about that. What do I need? I need to feel comfortable and centered and connected. I don't feel connected to him at all right now. Like, what do I need? And so I started following that and navigating from that place, and it just started getting clearer and clearer. Like, what do I want? What do I need? What do I want him to feel? What do I want him to feel? What could possibly open to that? And through that pathway, you know, it was really clear to me. It was like, we need to spend time together, and we need to spend time in nature. And not me being like, Mom, I need my baby back, but like more like, let's go as humans and go out into nature and let nature challenge us and teach us, and let us do that as a family. And so it was a really quick turnaround. And I was like, all those resources I was going to put into all those other things, I'm going to put into trips into nature and like spending time with like really raw water and big granite and like things to jump off of and to challenge us deeply. And, you know, and we've been pulsing in and out of being home and working and then going out and doing those things, but complete reorganization, like beautiful, completely different. And I wouldn't have thought that. I can tell you right now, if I go to the way of thinking that I was like, you should do this and you should do that, it would be like, I work really hard and then I'm going to go and do these things. And I would never take the resources to just go on vacation. Like, that's not the way my mind would have worked. And I think the pathway was really different than what I would have thought of. And if I followed what I thought I should have done, I'm pretty certain things would be a lot worse now. I can imagine the trajectory of me trying to take him to talk to someone who he didn't want to talk to, and to try to do activities that he had no desire to be a part of. It would have made things much, much worse. And it's not worse, it's better. And yeah, there's a lot more communication and connection. Not that those things might not be a part of things moving forward, but it was through me being willing to feel what was actually happening for me that I found a different pathway. And so, yeah.
That's beautiful. I heard that it was also, feels like some of it also came from the space of, well, what do I need? Like allowing that to also be part of the information. And then that kind of flowed, then it feels like really gracefully, maybe effortlessly into like him, like feeling into what he might need or want, or
It even just put me in a position where I could listen to what he needed and wanted, right? So I could actually hear him. because I wasn't like doing this thing of like, I'm so afraid of all of your behaviors right now, and so I can't even see you. I settled and was like, I'm really afraid. Okay. I'm present. I'm current with that now. So now I'm not afraid to actually listen to you. Like I can be with you because I've owned and admitted that I'm afraid to myself, right? And so like I can actually see you. It's not this voice that's like, that I'm seeing instead of actually seeing him. So then in actually seeing him, something really, really shifted. And then I could actually hear what he was needing and what he was wanting. Whether or not he even knew what it was, I could actually see him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were things that he did know, and that too. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
A few things that you've said, and you've even actually used the word at least a couple of times, I'm pretty sure. Sovereignty. Mm-hmm. It's one of those ones for me that this last year has just come over and over and over again. I find that in doing this depth work, soul work, spirit work, and being in connection and in meditation and flow, like words sometimes just come and they become themes and they become through lines, right? And they become navigation points. And sovereignty has been one of them, and you keep using it. And I even felt it myself. I'm curious to have you talk into it if it feels alive for you. Because I felt it right then, like the way that I've been working with it and feeling in my own system, how you just said that you've said so many things that to me that tie into that, like radical self-responsibility of everything, including every feeling too, right? And when you just said that too, like, oh, I'm afraid, like that ownership of that experience and that felt sensation, then going into all the places to really be with yourself where you are. And then just like the full ownership of that. And so for me, I'll take it just a little step further, and then I'm curious to see how it plays for you, is that I've definitely experienced that the more radical self-ownership I take and make and like really stand in myself and for myself, the more absolutely I feel like I can see every single person and thing so much more clearly.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not muddled with my experience bleeding everywhere. It's just like me, and it's mine, and I'm in full ownership and love and holding and tending and caring and presence, all the things, right? And I got that. I got that going. I don't need you to do that for me, like maybe once in a blue moon. I might call you up and be like, hey, Gita, can you like help me with, right? But in general, and it clears the field. What I find is it clears the field so much for then you to be you. Like I get to just be in full, and then you get to be you, and then magic gets to arrive, because it's like, whoa, if I'm doing that and you're doing that, and then we're like both in the space of the unknown in a sense. What do we want to create together, right? So I'm curious how that moves for you, if that brings anything up for you.
No, I think you said it really, articulated it exactly, really, really well, exactly how I experience it. Yeah, that radical responsibility and sovereignty to really be so deeply in myself and allow whatever's here to be real and to be true, and then to allow that for you too. And and then it is the mystery, like what can we actually co-create together? We don't know. And that curiosity in the relational space is so rich with life. Yeah.
Because I heard you, you said that with your working with your husband. You said sovereignty multiple times, and I'm like, ooh, she's doing it.
Yeah.
She's doing it. Because that to me is that edge right now. Like, I know, I literally just got out of, I'm going to choose painterly words here. Very well-chosen words. I have just emerged from a full immersion of experiencing for me what feels not that in relationship. All the ways in which I became, enmeshed, codependent, like my identity of self got infused or somehow into, like totally with someone else, and like all the ways that I did that. Like, and I fully over the course of 4 years got to the space where I was like, oh, I see me. I see me, I feel me in all those places. Like, and it took every single time, oh, it's me. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, mine is me. This is about me. Like, for me, this is about me. I got to do me, right? Like, and so it was like a full, I feel it a lot, like reconnecting all the hookup places back to myself, right? All the places that historically have been like, oh, I'm going to hook up to you there. Like, that's where I get that thing. It's from you right here, right? And instead of being like, oh, wait, nope, it's here. All of them, right? It's here. And like hooking it all back up inside here. And then the interesting I haven't gotten to really live it in like romantic partnership yet. And that's part of my like, whoa, what's that going to be like? Because my romantic partnerships thus far have been exceedingly karmic, where I got to really like work through all that's not sovereign and like beautiful and pure. Or at least, I mean, that's how it felt, right? It was like not beautiful and not pure, even in here. And sovereignty within partnership, romantic partnership. I feel like that's such like a cutting edge right there.
Cutting edge.
It is.
Yeah. I am not claiming that I'm doing that 100% or well all the time, and that is exactly what I'm working on. Like, and I think that we're working on like how do we do that? What does that look like? What does that mean? How do we, also knowing that community is important and that we need each other in all these different ways, but to not make anyone else responsible for any particular set of things all the time for our okayness, but to allow that opening, that connection, that engagement, that sharing, and then to also know that without that, it's okay, and that if they don't meet it in any certain particular type of way, you know, how do I hold my own emotional state and then offer that back, and then to see what they choose and to be okay with what they choose. And then to also have boundaries and lines around like what is needed to be chosen or not, right? So it's like it's constantly moving dynamic, and I think that sovereignty of emotional experience is foundational to it. Yeah.
Well, I imagine, because I feel like part of what I tracked when you were saying like what's really working and what's feeling really alive for you in the relationship, I think part of the reason also, at least like my reflection or witnessing, might be that because you were able to find such a space of like, you get to be you, like you, and you're owning you, and you're living you, and you're expressing, and then it sounds like he is too. And then the two of you are like more and more maybe finding how it fits or doesn't fit together, right?
Yeah, and both those things, right? Like it's definitely that, like what fits, what doesn't fit, and then negotiating, like is that comfortable or is that not? Like what do I need to fit and what do I not need to fit in order for partnership to be able to happen? Like, you know, like and what does that feel like? And to know that we are both individual beings and we're both growing and changing. And in some of those ways they're together, and some of those ways they're not. And like to really be okay with that, and to be like, wow, that person over there is going to do their whole own thing, their whole own story. And I have to be okay with that. And I'm going to do my whole, and I'm not going to try to shape myself for that story to fit. I'm going to shape myself to what I truly need to be and am. And what does that look like? And then what connects and what doesn't connect.
Right.
And then we're still growing and changing. And then what connects and what doesn't connect. And I'm not going to make you responsible to fit me. I'm going to allow you to be you. That's what love is. And to keep doing that. And after 20 years, after, you know, a shared mortgage and a house and our own businesses and 2 children and, you know, a lot of really enmeshed things that are like in physical form and reality, and to kind of begin to extricate and to see what's actually possible. And it's a lot. And we're doing pretty good right now. So, I mean, there's waves, but so.
Yeah. Does sovereignty feel like a big theme for you right now too?
Huge. Sovereignty is the theme. Yeah.
Can you name a little bit more of what that is for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot like what I was just saying is like, I think sovereignty for me, in the way that we work, in the energy work that we do, that I do in Syntara, we talk about people being internal or external energetically. And you're I think internal energetically, and I'm external energetically. So the reason I'm saying that is that when I think of sovereignty, I also think about it as a field. Like I think about it as all of us instead of just inside of me. And so for me, sovereignty is really this quality, like I was saying a moment ago, of can I be really true and authentic to who I am, to be complete and whole and evolving into who this human is meant to be? And can I allow everyone else to do that at the same time? That we're all doing that simultaneously. And that is what I think sovereignty is. It's like as a field principle. So it's beyond just me. It's also that allowance of others and for others. And and it's a tricky thing because then, you know, my animal brain, the limbic brain and the mammalian brain, like all those other aspects of me are also totally bound in community and connection with other. And there's so much deep conditioning culturally, collectively, familially around what we do to fit and to belong. And so the tricky thing for me is that there's nothing wrong with that. I just really think we're evolving, and we're not evolving to be sovereign and isolated. I think we're evolving to be sovereign. And in my belief, if we are all exactly who we are, we actually spontaneously fit together in ways beyond our imagining. And we create collective wholes, together. And so there's something about that it's only through sovereignty that we find our true connection. It's only through sovereignty that we can actually have the depth of intimacy that we actually want, to be seen for who we truly are fully. Because if we're not even allowing ourselves to be that person or embody that, how could anyone ever love us for the fullness of who we are, if we don't even allow ourselves to be that or know who that is ourselves? So, yeah, tricky and paradoxical. But yeah, that's a little bit how I see sovereignty.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the gifts, like the great gifts. So much of what you said also, two major things of what you said are also what I've been feeling so deeply. I love the community piece of it. It's like how we naturally fit when we're really living our honest self. And I've already been experiencing that even more. Like it's just what happens when we're living so authentically, right? Yeah. And also how much sovereignty does naturally, I feel like, honor and see and respect the sovereignty in others. Like when I'm living it so deeply and truly to myself in complete honest freedom of being me, it's this natural allowing, I feel like, of allowing that and seeing it perfectly in others too. Like I would not want anything more or less or different from anyone other than them to be exactly who they are, who they're evolving into being, like in their own beautiful choice, in their own beautiful arriving, right? And it does, I feel like it is that natural both and of if it's happening in here, then it's happening out here, and then it's happening.
Yeah. Some of the tricky, sticky places, I think sometimes in relationship and intimate relationship and others, but I think the closer ones are harder, is when I think I know what that should look like. Right. And and not even that I'm necessarily wrong all the time. I might actually be right. But it's not having control over that. It's like really like allowing that to be what it is. And so one of the things that's been really helpful for me in the past couple of years is I did a lot of relational skills building and communication. And that has been really, really, really fruitful. Like that has been probably one of the greatest things that's helped me across the board relationally, because I think I know a lot by myself. Like it's in application and relationship that things get tricky.
Is there any particular body that you draw from, or multiple, or your own, or?
A lot of this came out of some of the circling principles and things like that. They're just pieces of relational skills and communication pieces that were really, really helpful, because I'd studied a lot of different communication pieces, but it always still felt like there was you need to know this, a hierarchical piece, like, you're not communicating in the way that I'm communicating, like, and then it would turn into a whole nother thing. And so this feels like it took out a lot of those pieces. It's just really dropping into, I see you do it a lot spontaneously in the way you communicate. I really appreciate a lot of how you are present with people and the way you communicate. I see you have that skill a lot. But really leading with curiosity, there's a way that I think our minds go into these structured patterns and ruts, like if this, then that thinking. If this person does this, it means that. And we're all functioning in totally different conditions, like completely different perceptual realities. And it's generally, it's less true than we think. And in a 20-year relationship, even if that was the way he functioned 10 years ago, it doesn't mean that's what he thinks now. But some part of my mind has it set, if this, then that. If he does this, if he says this, it means this. And if I can get really good at throwing that out and instead really leading with curiosity, well, what did you mean by that? Like, well, what does that mean for you? That word doesn't mean the same thing to you as it does to me, and then whole things open up. Like that wasn't what was happening at all. And it's hard to do that and to stay current in that way. And to me, this is sovereignty too. Can I really allow someone else to name, own, define their own experience without me deciding what that meant or means. And it's really humbling, it's really humbling, and it's really beautiful. It allows for so much more freedom. And this may not be true for everyone always, but at least at this point in my life, in doing that with the people who I've chosen to have around me, they're good people. And what's actually happening is almost always, if I'm getting triggered, better than what I thought was happening. And so it's kindness to me too. Yeah, to be able to move in that way. Yeah.
So like circling relational or communication skills from circling. So curiosity, was there any other
so
major...
curiosity, leading with curiosity, sharing impact, actual impact. So there's a lot of times where in communicating there'll be an agenda. And so not having agenda, like I want you to think this, I want you to understand this, I want whatever, but instead to just get really present how I'm feeling and share that in the moment. Like, oh, I'm feeling kind of, however, when you're saying this right now, this is actually how I'm feeling in my body right now. And really being able to just say that really diffuses the situation. Because otherwise, if there's a way of you're saying this is happening, then it's like, already my reality is trying to overtake the situation. It's flooding the field and the space, and there's no room for the other person. But if I actually own my own impact against sovereignty, and I just sit in my own seat and say I'm noticing I'm feeling really dysregulated, or I'm really sad right now, and and it opens a door instead of closing one down. And so that's been really it's been really helpful to apply it in different ways relationally. There's other more complex ones, but those are some of the leading ones.
I literally experienced that one today. It was really interesting because earlier today my ex-husband came over, and he was in a pretty distraught place, and it was fascinating because I could almost feel the freight train of our past relating coming. I was like, no, because I could feel it, and I was like, chug, no. And what I was noticing these past few days, because my physical body has been taking so much of my bandwidth of just going through what it's been going through, that I noticed I was way more emotional than usual. My daughter at one point was doing this thing